My name is Pat Bishop, and I'm originally from the Green Bay, Appleton area, but now I live in Shawano, on a lake with my husband where we retired. And here I have a very nice studio upstairs that I can look out over the lake, so that's nice. I've been sewing since I was a fairly small child, I would say, and sewed all through my life. Um, Started making quilts in the 70s and eventually started making art quilts in the 2000s. Previous to that, I had done some watercolor painting and rose mauling, and I had ended up teaching rose mauling, but those things went along the wayside, and I concentrated on the art quilting. When my first grandson was about to be born, I thought, you've always wanted to be an artist, so now is the time to start doing that. So, and I like working with fabric because it seems to have, it has a lot of vibrancy and there's texture, things I don't feel you can totally get with paint. And I kind of use the fabric as if it was paint, I guess. I do add some paint in my process, acrylics and watercolors, which I will show you when I give you my studio tour. Shall we do that?
Sure, yeah. Sure, yeah, we can start with that. You were saying you were naming the place where you live, but what's the state where you live?
Oh, I live in Wisconsin.
Right. I'm not very familiar with every place in the States.
Right. I forget.
Thank you. Okay, let's do the studio tour.
Enjoying the video? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when new Mastrius videos are added.
Yeah, okay. So as I said, it's upstairs, and I do most of my work on a drafting table. This is where I do all my fusing and drawing out of things. It's a nice big area.
Nice.
I have two sewing machines. One is just kind of your basic domestic Janome that I use for finishing and sometimes piecing. But ultimately, the machine I use for doing the final quilting, the free motion quilting, is this big capri, which has like an 18-inch throat. And I do all my free motion quilting on this. I got that during the pandemic because as we were all confined, seemed like a good time to really dig in and work on my art.
So do you do all the quilting yourself, or do you get some done at another place?
No, I do everything myself. Yeah, nothing is done by anyone else. And you'll see when you see my quilts that they are heavily quilted. Here's a piece that is fairly recent. The background in this is acrylic paint, but then the trees are fused on, and you probably can't see it, but it's there's a lot of quilting on there. Some of the other ones you can see it better.
You have a beautiful view there.
Yeah, I really enjoy being here and watching the birds and the ducks and just enjoying watching the water. It just kind of is soothing to me.
This is where you find good inspiration too, like what inspires you?
Yeah, a lot of my inspiration comes from nature. So, I love trees and birds. So it really does help. And this property was previously owned by my parents, and when they became elderly, no one else wanted it. So my husband and I bought the property and then built our house here. So it has a lot of good memories.
Yeah. Well, that's a nice quilt. I like the texture and all the different colors in the cow.
Yeah, this is Nutmeg. He was owned by a friend of my daughter's, and he's a Scottish Highland cow. A lot of my work is based on memories of mine, trying to maintain those, keep those memories alive. And so you can see, my style is fairly choppy. I like abstract, and this is all just chopped up fabric that's fused on and then quilted to give it more texture.
Neat. And the background is, it looks like the stitching is like just horizontal lines.
Right, the background is just basic horizontal. And I do like this gradated fabric. This is a more simple piece with the background. And I've been doing a little more of the simple backgrounds recently. These are more examples of the same style. You can see they're very simple, simply done, but a lot of stitching. All slightly abstract.
And those backgrounds are fabric, right? They're not painted.
Yeah, you're right. These are all fabric backgrounds, all total fabric. Some of the fabrics are hand dyed, like that red for that.
Oh yeah. Cool.
That barn is hand dyed, and I do the hand dyeing myself. I haven't done it for a while because I have a good supply now, but someday I may have to do it again. This is a very recent work. This is acrylic painted and then heavily quilted. So that was another thing I did during the pandemic, is take a class in abstract painting with acrylics. So that's something I really enjoy. This one has a painted background with acrylics. Again, very simple. This is
when you do your painting with acrylic on fabric, do you use a medium for that, or do you just use the acrylic straight as is?
I just water the acrylics down. I don't use any textile medium. I know some people do, but this is art. It's not going to be worn or anything, so there's no need to use a textile medium. It works fine. It's like painting on canvas. Plus it's watered down, so it's not real thick, so I can stitch through it. Now these are more it's still all fused, but it's more strippy in the background. And that gives a lot of interest to the piece. And you can see those are the top one is slightly abstract and the lower one is very much abstract.
Yeah, there is the doggy.
Yes, this is one of my favorites. Was my brother's dog. He was we lunched together once a month, and he was laying on the floor and just looked so peaceful, and I took his picture and had to make a quilt out of him. So
What kind of fabrics do you use?
I use all kinds of fabrics. I like to always get some silk in there because that really adds a lot. Linens, recycled fabrics, damask tablecloths that are hand dyed, those work out really well. They take the dye beautifully and they just work up really nicely.
They give texture, I guess, right?
Pardon?
The damask tablecloths, they would give texture too.
Yeah, yes, it does. Yeah. And those, are recycled because you could pick them up very reasonably at a thrift sale. So I had a lot of those, or still do. This is a different technique that I do sometimes. It's all of the black is outline black thread stitched, and then I go back in and paint with watercolors. And after that, I come back and do more heavy quilting. You could see the stitching is like 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch apart. So
So you
And-
you do the outline first and then you do the painting and then you go back for the quilting?
Right, and there is no other fabric other than I start out with white fabric and then everything is either painted or stitched, so there's no additional fabric added to that.
That's cool.
And these two are also done with that same method.
They look like watercolor too, and they are watercolor, right? So yeah.
Yes, they're watercolor, and since I used to do watercolors, and Andrew Wyeth is still my favorite watercolorist. That I'm still drawn to watercolors.
Mhm.
But this is more of the style I'm known for and do most often. Again, this one has that gradated background fabric, but I use a lot of different fabrics to give it more life and interest in the leaf.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
So now we're going to go down the hallway. Am I upstairs? This one is called Whooper, and again, that's got that strippy fused background.
That's so
using-
beautiful. Yeah.
And you can see the texture on the bird is done differently, and that kind of makes it look like feathers.
Mhm. Yeah. The
And
background, your backgrounds are often like just rectangular strips, but in the bird here, it looks like all kinds of shapes you used to represent the feathers.
Right. I don't, the background is just the setting for what my focal point is. So that's why I don't try not to do too much in the background. I like to keep it fairly simple, and
Mhm.
it looks more landscape-like when I do the the horizontal strips and also the horizontal stitching. Where in the bird, you can see that the stitching is in more the shape of the feathering.
Right. Yeah. That's
And this style was developed over time. Just, I learned the strip background piecing from someone, but I refined it and added to it and, did things a little differently. So it just constant practicing. And when you have a passion for something, you work at it a lot and you get better with time and just doing the work.
Mhm.
They say talent doesn't normally appear until after you've done the work.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Thanks. Now this one is different than anything else I've shown you so far. This one is all pieced. It's not fused at all. And this is made from men's ties, from my husband's ties, people I worked with. It's called Tied to the Landscape. So it was my thought that this looked like a landscape of some sort. I like using the ties because they add a lot of vibrancy, the silk especially, and it quilts really nicely.
Are you using just the silk ties or other ties as well?
This is made mostly of silk ties, but there's also some wool blends and just some gray fabrics mostly are the other fabrics in here, but it's mostly ties.
Beautiful. Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, this one is called Maidenhair Fern. Again, it's based on a memory of me walking in the woods up north and looking down in the deep dark forest and seeing these beautiful maidenhair ferns with their almost neon colored leaves.
That's gorgeous. Yeah.
This one, it was an earlier piece with the strip pieced fused background. And in this one, I've got some velvet that's been discharged dye. That's where you put bleach on the fabric and that pulls out the color. So that tree fabric was mostly black, and some of the pieces you put bleach on them and then that takes away the color.
Yeah. That's cool. Wow.
This was a self-portrait I was asked to do for an exhibit that was called All About Me. And it was a friend had invited some of her artist friends to submit a piece in their style. That was a self-portrait. So
Mhm. So, what is your favorite method for the quilting right now?
I think this is probably my favorite method. This, like the Skippy one, just doing the choppiness, um, mostly straight cuts and yeah, abstract for sure. Slightly abstract or more abstract, but it varies. I go back and forth. This one is called Pine Relic Structures. It's very abstract. I was based on a photograph that my cousin had taken and given me permission to use. It looks nothing like the original photograph, but I know what it is. And I like it, and that's what matters.
And that's why you're an artist, right? It's the creativity.
Right. It may start as something, and then you don't always know what it's going to develop in. And I think that's the fun part about it, is seeing what develops and the happy accidents and the problem solving.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, it's beautiful.
This one is called Ephraim Shop in Door County, is fairly popular in Wisconsin. It's kind of like the East Coast, the main area where everything is on the shore, and it's just a very touristy but beautiful area. So this one was a problem piece. It took me a long time to finish it. I actually put it away for 6 months and then took it out again because I was having problems with it. Ended up putting some paint near the bottom, and that kind of brought things together.
It looks nice though.
Thank you. My husband, it's probably one of his favorites, but I think because it's less abstract, it's not a favorite of mine.
Are the flowers embroidered on it?
No, that's all just fabric, fused on and then stitched.
Wow.
And the final piece in the tour is this one, which is again different than all the rest. It's mono printed and heavily quilted. It started out as a practice piece for another piece that I wanted to use this technique on, and then when I had this practice piece all done, I looked at it and I thought, I would like this, so I'm gonna. So I finished it, and it's called Screwed because if you can see the flat heads and the Phillips head screw marks on there. That's why it got called Screwed.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I see. Yeah, that's a cool idea.
Sometimes
That's
sometimes it's hard naming things.
Yeah. It was a good idea.
That is the tour.
So that was a neat tour of the studio. That's awesome. So
Thank you.
how do you do the fusing? Can you
Yeah, I'll show you how I do that once I get this camera up here. It's not. Okay, I gotta turn the camera around.
Yeah. Maybe before you start, or you can do it as part of your demo, your process too. What is your process of starting a quilt?
Okay. Well, when I start something, it's normally done with one of my fabrics or one of my photographs. So in this case, I have a piece that I'm working on right now, and this is the photograph that I'm working off of. So I'm trying to reproduce that. And what I do is I take that photograph and then I enlarge it on parchment paper, because the parchment paper can be used to I can fuse right onto that. And
Mhm.
then I can take it off and place it on the fabric.
That's
So-
a little caterpillar, so.
Yeah. So I sketch it on there with pencil, and then I use a little, it's called a woody, but it's kind of, I can make the lines bigger with that, or so that I can actually see them better. And then
is it water soluble too, or is it just?
Yes, it's like watercolor.
Yeah,
It
and
can,
that doesn't affect the fabric?
no, no, it doesn't. And plus it's on the underside of the fabric where the fusible is. So all of my fabrics have fusible applied to the back of them. So it's a paper backed fusible web, and you rip the paper off, and then you've got just the fabric with the fusible on it. And from there I cut that up and then just kind of snip away and start putting things down. After I've got my whole foreground done, so in this case it's going to be the caterpillar and the flower. Once I have all of that assembled, then I will take a piece of batting the size of my quilt and apply the background. So all of those strips, if that's what I decide to do, or if I decide to do a gradated background, I will put that down and I will quilt it heavily, like doing the horizontal lines, because that's going to be the background. And then I will fuse what I've made here. All of this is going to be lifted up and then placed on that background. And then I'll iron it, and then it'll be stuck to that background. And then I'll do the final quilting. So that's the whole process.
So the final quilting will be around those flower elements and the caterpillar.
Correct. Yep. Yep. I know this doesn't look like much yet, but hopefully it will.
Beautiful color combination, the complements.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. So what kind of fusing do you use? You said it's paperback, but is there a certain brand?
I use, there's a certain brand I use. It's called HTC Transweb by HTC. Some quilt stores sell it, but I order mine online by the volt. And then when I do my quilting, a lot of people that do this kind of work use very heavy fabric, and I use a very fine fabric. It's called 100 weight, which I think is probably the finest weight thread you can get. And the reason I use the fine thread is because I don't really want the thread to show. I just want the texture to show. I'm more I'm focused on the fabric than I am the thread.
So do you match the thread colors to the fabric colors, or do you?
To some degree, but it's not that critical because the thread is so fine that you can almost not see it. It's almost like using invisible thread.
Yeah. And so for the group that we're gonna start, you would focus on the quilting, but you're also looking at composition and design.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Design, composition, value, focal point. Normally when I teach classes, the first thing we talk about is the values, and where you place the values is important in your composition. So that's one of the, and I start with very small, have people make little tiny, like Post-it note size sketches to start with, just so they can get a basic idea of where their darks and lights are going to be. and where their focal point's going to be and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, that's very important. And I'm also going to focus on professionalism, why it's important to develop your professionalism if you're going to take this seriously. I think it's important that you present yourself in a professional manner and do, and if you want to enter shows, how you go about that and get the best results. Taking pictures of your work. I have an area in the back room here that I have set up for when I take pictures of my work. If you're going to submit something for an exhibit, it's important that you have good photography. So I will probably talk about that. And it's not that hard to do if you just know how to do it right. If you want to be treated as a professional, you need to act like a professional and, submit exactly what is asked for. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've been accepted in some global exhibitions through Studio Art Quilt Associates. Also I've been in fine art shows. I've received from a regional exhibit that we have in the Midwest area. They have a show every year at one of the art museums, and it's a fine art show. So photography, painting, sculpture, all kinds of things are accepted into those shows. And the first time I entered that exhibit, I received a first place, which isn't the highest award, but it's the highest award is best of show, and I got first place, which was right after that. So I was pretty thrilled. And then I did the same thing several years later at that same exhibit. So I've been fairly successful competing against fine artists.
You always also have been published in a few magazines, because I picked up by accident the Quilting Arts magazine this month, and there you were.
Yeah, just recently I was in Quilting Arts magazine. I submitted a proposal that I write an article for the magazine, and they got back to me and they said, well, we'd really like you to do 2 articles. So I submitted 2 articles, one on my technique and one was they call a spotlight, where it talks about all my work, and I got on the cover. So that was very cool. Have your piece on the cover. And then I was also I didn't submit a proposal, but I was requested by this magazine, Art Quilting Studio, just recently to write an article. And so I did that. So those 2 things came out within a few months of each other. And also in August, I went to Denver. I was invited by the Quilt Show, which is an online membership group for quilters, art quilters, run by Alex Anderson and Ricky Timms, who are big names in the quilting and art quilting field. So I went out there and taped a segment, an hour long with them. So that was very cool. And if you go to my website, you could find, you can see how you can watch that segment. And there's also an interview on there with the quilting arts people, because I was selected as as the cover girl.
Cool. So for a session with you through Mastrius, you would be focusing on like one subject per session, and kind of like.
Yeah, right. I think, we would start with some of the basics, or depending on the needs of the group, what they are interested in learning, I think is one of the things that would be taken into consideration. I'm not going to teach people something they already feel comfortable in.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
And I do love to teach. I really enjoy seeing people get excited about working with fabric and developing themselves and realize there are no quilt police out there
Oh, cool.
if you come from a sewing background. So
Mhm.
you would be familiar with that.
Excuse me. Yeah. Sorry.
One thing I want to stress is how to develop your own style rather than copying someone else. You know, you do what you like to do. It should be fun while you're doing it. It should be something you enjoy and not trying to please others, but to please yourself. If you please yourself when you're making your art, you will make a better connection with people and they will see that your uniqueness and appreciate that.
Yes, that's very true. I like it too when you said like talent doesn't appear until you do the work. That's a good thing. I'm gonna keep that in mind.
Yeah. It takes a lot of work, but you know, I've figured out for myself that if you have a passion for something, you're going to do the work, and it's, you know, everything's not going to come easily, but you just can't stop yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you would like to add? Like,
Um,
mhm.
I would like to say that I'm inspired by things around me for the most part, things that are personal to me. And I think that's something we should all keep in mind, that it'll be more special to you and you will do a better job if it's something that really speaks to you. I have
Yeah,
a friend.
sorry, when I see the quilt behind you with the trees and then I look through your window, I can see the connection. Totally.
Yeah, they do look very similar. I didn't realize that.
But it's beautiful though. Like I really like your style of the quilting and the little pieces, the pieced backgrounds. I like that. So yeah,
Thank you.
look really forward to working with you, and I'll be the navigator for you for our sessions every month. So, and I look
It'll be
forward.
fun.
Mhm.
Me too. I'm anxious to get started.
Okay, cool.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.